I'll go ahead. Yeah, mute here. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This might be a little confusing for everyone. So just to clarify, at this point, I'm calling to order the work session, and we're going to attempt to work through the work session topics. If we do not get finished with the work session topics by 2 p.m., then we will recess the work session and then go ahead and start the reconvene meeting that we didn't conclude the other night. And we'll start it at 2 o'clock and then go through it, and then we'll come back and finish up after this one is recessed again, any additional work session items. So it's sort of a little bit complicated on the timing, just for the way we've advertised it. So we'll get started. Hopefully we can get through this within an hour. If not, we'll table it or recess it until later. So, Don, you want to jump off on the first one?
Yes, sir. Again, since we're going to be having a lot of things on the screen, we do have this podium on order. I'm just going to slide this over that way.
If you wanted to stay seated at your desk, though, that's fine.
All right.
That works just as well.
It's the work session. All right. So really the only thing that's left the only thing on the agenda today is a follow-up from the budget retreat itself, and that's in regards to coming back to our major and mid-level CIP discussions and prioritization. And before I take us through that, there are two items that I just want to point out that before today's meeting's over, I am looking for direction and potentially a decision to maybe put on the agenda for a vote in two areas. And I'll go ahead and jump in. One is a reminder that going back to the Koala Park, if you recall, we talked about that the part of grant application process was upon us, and the pre-application is due March 15th. And so what's happening currently right now, we did have a part of representative come up, walk the property with our recreation director. She felt like it was a good, solid project to be submitted. We do have the pre-application is due the 15th, and we currently have staff working on that. And I just want to make sure the board is comfortable, and we'll go over the details, but we're utilizing the budget that was presented to this board in regards to potential construction costs in order for us to apply for the $500,000 grant. The actual final grant application is not due till May 2nd. And that's when we will have more details and things of that nature we can bring back before this board. That one, and then I also need to talk to the board a little bit more about, there's some things going on with the Dillsboro property that I'd like to spend a little bit of time to talk about. There is the Stillwells own an easement that cut across that property, and they're getting ready to exercise their rights to do so. And they have called the county up and offered to move that easement. And I did check into what you were asking about, Brian. They did offer to move that easement that would not split our property. And I would recommend that we move forward with that offer. So past that, I'll just start taking us through this. And if the board wants to jump straight into those and get into prioritization or however you wish to do it. But let me just jump and just give everybody a reminder of what's in front of you. We do have the information provided by our finance officer as far as CIP projects. Just a reminder to the board, obviously we've completed the health department renovation. We are currently working on the Green Energy Park Dillsboro complex. We are currently, as you know, getting ready to go out to bid for the indoor pool facility in the amount of $22 million. We are going through the process of working with the consultants and going through the process to get us ready to issue $20 million worth of bonds. The other $2 million are anticipated to come out of our fund balance, if you recall. And you notice that 512 there, that'll be referred to later because we've already paid for the $1.4 million. So the only thing to get to that $22 million additional funds needed is the 512 to come out of the general fund. And then obviously it's already approved in the CIP Justice Center, and that'll take a good year and a half of planning before we can have numbers associated. The other items was the major recreation projects. As of course the board's aware, you approved the land purchase of Qualla Park, and there's an estimated construction cost of $1.6 million. Dillsboro Park, I talked to you about the range there, Colowee River Park, and then the Glenville Casters Recreation Master Plan. And Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to quickly go through this, and then the idea is for us to get to available revenues and for you as a board to start talking about priorities. We also provided information in regards to just responses we got from individuals about mid-level capital projects. And you can see anywhere from storage buildings to looking at the Cashier's Master Recreation Plan, and instead of doing the entire project to try to piece it out, to Webster Park, to the Paris Cabin, the Gaelic property, things of that nature. And of course, at the bottom, we start getting into maintenance items that have just been put off throughout the years. And then ultimately, what we'll do is come back to this, but I believe what we can do is come back to the projected revenues for those projects mentioned, and you can see our projected revenues from our Conservation, Preservation, Recreation Fund and our Cat Reserve Fund going into the end of next year will be about $2.8 million. Next year, meaning fiscal year 22-23. Excuse me. And then ultimately, we didn't talk about this at the budget retreat, but ultimately, once you look at our fund balance and look at what we have to reserve and reserve by the state, there's that 512 that I mentioned to you earlier, that we also anticipate funding the additional costs for the pool of 512. That leaves $5.4 million available of non-committed funds. And this would take us down to the current policy of we will not let our fund balance go below 25%. Doesn't mean we have to immediately get it to 25%. It just means that's how much is available to discuss these priorities that we were talking about. So it's the 5.4 million and the 2.8 million at the end of next year. And obviously, if we try to plan it out over the next several years, then we have additional revenues there. And Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, what I'd like to do is just maybe talk about those two items, and then we can come back to the.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. What I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and talk about the. Make sure it's here. The major recreation projects. This was the drawing that was shown at the budget retreat. This is the property in the Qualla area next to Smoky Mountain Elementary School. And a couple notes that I talked to the board about in regards to what we need to put together is we need to put together a preliminary site plan by March 15th with cost estimates. Now, I've also put on here a couple another items I just wanted to show the board, that if you recall, when we go through the part-of process, what I'm attempting to do is to not include this upper section of this property in that part-of application. And that way, if we are granted the $500,000, that it'll only put restrictions on the lower half of this property where we build the park. I also wanted to show you when we were first looking at this property, I wanted to show you another drawing that we were somewhat looking at, but it gives you the concept about what part-of will see is a trail system below. As you all know, there's utilities running right through here. And so what will appear before you next Monday is it won't quite look like this. First of all, it's a little bit more colorful. Part-of don't want it to look like this, even though this really gives you a better idea of what it looks like. Part-of's site plan really is more rudimentary and it's color-coded. They've got certain requirements. And so what you'll really see is a trail system built out in this lower area with mainly the parking area and all these elements in the center level here. And that's what you will see. Now, the staff is currently working on it right now, so I can't present it in front of you. But remember, we still plan on, so part of, from their standpoint, they are literally going to be looking at this property. And then I've also asked Ms. Baker to start working on surveying. If you would talk a little bit about how you're going to have it surveyed.
Certainly. So the person who did the original survey work for Duke Energy is available to help us with this survey. And he's going to survey it to show it in two sections instead of the three, and it'll be an upper and lower section. And I think what Donna and I discussed is that lower section will come at the bottom of the transmission line on down, and then the rest will be the upper section that will be reserved.
Is the power line gonna stay, or are they gonna move that?
I think it'll stay. Yeah.
Is that why you put that line where you did, Don, to keep that upper 7.5 acres? To follow along with that power line?
Yeah, the power line will have to stay. That's a
So
transmission
that's
line.
not something they're gonna move?
No.
Okay,
And so,
I got you.
from a Partif standpoint, a couple things. This is just a natural. From a building perspective, it is a natural cut point because since the power lines aren't going to move, you can't build any structures under that power line.
Right.
So it was a natural divide point. Now, if you heard what Ms. Baker said, we're going to put the power line easement on this upper track because part of gets a little sensitive about utility easements on land that they either fund to purchase and or to build on. So the one track we're talking about on top, as Ms. Baker said, will include this easement that'll be right here and all of this acreage. Now, what'll end up happening though, that's the reason I wanted to try to show you examples. You'll see a plan that looks like something like this next week. But what our intentions are is to build something that has trailways and so forth up here. But from a Partif perspective, they're only funding what occurs here. And then these trails up here, we'll just fund with their own monies.
And then if needed, they could be moved at some point.
Yes, ma'am. And then what that does, in case there's ever, I present it in a way if there's ever a need from the schools, that we could expand there. But, maybe there's joint programming that occurs. Maybe there's joint things that we want to occur on that property. And by creating these clear division lines between Partif land and just county land, there will never be any confusion on whether or not we're allowed to have a function on this upper track, whatever we choose.
Is that what you wanna keep that upper piece for, is for expansion of the school?
For the schools, for whatever may occur, because
Yeah, they need to build
Yeah.
a bigger cafeteria or whatever.
yeah, or yes, sir, or
Same
they
thing.
wanted to have, let's say they wanted to have some type of educational program out on that, where they held classes out there or had something. What happens is that they specifically cannot fund K through 12 educational functions. That is specifically disallowed through their funds, the grant we're asking for. So by doing this, it removes all of those conversations. If we ever tried to use, and it'll be 25-year restriction if we do get this grant, and if we ever tried to use this bottom section here for anything other than this in the next 25 years, then it's not just paying Partif back. You actually have to go find another piece of property and build a park nearby on
We've
that
all
piece of
agreed
property.
to do that, haven't we?
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about that before.
Yeah.
A couple times. Hey, this,
Oh,
go
I'm
back to
sorry.
the one you was just on right there.
That one? Or,
This one right, the one you're on.
okay.
It's not similar to the next one.
No, it's got the parking down here. The original one you looked at had the parking, and that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna, wait a minute, I'm hitting wrong. See how the parking's up top?
See that?
Okay, so we're more than likely what you're going to see is trail systems that kind of go around in this lower section, but I believe we'll still leave the parking on that shelf. Remember, there are 3 levels here.
Gotcha. That's
Yeah.
what I want to ask.
Yeah.
And that road comes in over to the left there, doesn't it?
No, that is the original drive.
Right.
That'll be
The
a,
house, yeah.
that'll be a maintenance entrance. We'll
Oh, I
need to have
see.
the drive off
Oh,
of here.
okay.
That is really steep right there.
Oh, is it?
And so we'll want the public entrance off of this road,
Yes.
and this will just be maintenance access.
Okay. That's good. Well, that one on the left, it's on a curve, and that can be a little problematic sometimes.
Yeah, but they don't go there. It comes in.
Right.
And the reason this is important, this all combines in these conversations because at the end of the day, you know, when you're talking about prioritizing, and we go back to the major recreation projects, then obviously what we're looking at here is we're looking at an estimated cost. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling through here. It's that $1.6 million that ultimately out of the 2.8 and the 5 million that I said they're available in the next year, you're committing by going through this process. Obviously, this is a pre-application. You're not fully committing until we put the final application in, but you're basically obligating $2 million to part of if they were to give you the $500,000 grant. And obviously, we're trying to get them to pay $500,000 out of that $1.6 million project.
So that's where this becomes relevant for today's conversations. And like Commissioner Deitch is saying, we've already, in essence, decided that we want to do this, or we wouldn't have purchased the property. But for us to be on the agenda at the next meeting, what will part of require of us? Do we need to formally take what kind of action to show them that we're going to set this money aside?
And I'm sorry, I said 1.6, but I think that's 1. Probably has everything involved in there. Or no, it is 1.6. All right. I'm sorry to answer your question. To me, I'm asking for you to vote to allow us to submit the grant application, which is in essence going to show a $1.686 million cost, in which we're asking $500,000 for. What that in essence is doing is saying if they grant us $500,000, we're committing the $1.186 million to this project.
And how long do we have to construct the park with those funds if we were awarded the grant?
I don't know the exact time, but it's rewarded, and then we have a year to couple years. I think it may be 3 years actually to build the park. I'll have to have Rusty verify that to you if he appears before you March 15th. But the last time I did a project like this, it was 3 years.
Okay. And I guess where I'm going with this is for fiscal year 22-23, we are projected to have a cumulative total of $2.8 million, which is a combination of the CPR capital reserve funds. And that would be more than enough in this current. But if we chose to do something else, and let's say we've got another year or two before we have to expend those funds, it could be that that's a next year budget conversation, and we would use the 2.8 for something else this year. We're not obligating it this year.
Yes, sir. And absolutely. You're talking about, when you say this year, you mean 22, 23? Or
Correct.
Yeah.
The new budget year we're working on.
And even, you know, we submitted in May. I don't think we get awarded until summer. You know, we'll go through months. You know how long it takes. We'll go through months of design and bidding. You're correct. More than likely, we would not start expending these funds until the end of 22, 23, and more than likely it would be 23, 24, even if we weren't delaying anything. Meaning that would just be the normal timeline of how long it would take to actually get the park built.
Okay.
I have a question, and this is on this page where it says planning, design, and site engineering cost estimate, and it's on, the heading is Equinox. Now, it looks to me like our planning department did an outstanding job in designing. Why do we have to pay for design and development when we have people on our own staff doing such a great job?
All right, let me make sure I know where you're at.
It's there's not a page number.
It's 51 design, survey, permitting, soil.
I think she's just asking in general,
In
why are we
general.
paying
Yeah.
Equinox
Like right here, it says,
as opposed to just doing this in-house?
because our in-house people have done a great job on that.
Well, this goes all the way to like bid specs. I mean, we'll have to bid this out. When you go through and you talk about design and development, you're talking about putting together, we don't have staff that can put together documentation that's ready to go bid, meaning you're literally doing specifications on the size of the bathrooms, on the size of, it's the same reason we had to spend that money, similar money for the Fairview concession stands. You have to spend architectural monies to go through and design the facilities, erosion control. You have to, depending on how much we disturb, you have to develop erosion control plans, grading plans. So it's much more in depth than sort of this preliminary design. This is more of a schematic phase of things. But in
That
order
clarifies.
to, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think our designs are beautiful, what they draw.
Potentially could be.
I see.
And
Okay.
these folks we're paying them to confirm that it can work and to draw the blueprints out
Okay.
to construct from.
Thank you.
And even here, they have done us a good job of just giving us some estimates here. But see, if we get awarded, we'll have to go through a selection process for these folks.
Okay.
I mean, this is an estimate that they gave us, and we worked with them and paid them a little bit of money just to get us in a position to actually apply for the grant.
Okay.
And then Don, on the next page, it says the site grading and preparation and all that. Has anybody been awarded that yet?
No, no,
Where
that's
does
what,
the mobilization come up? Who came up with 20 grand for mobilization?
these are all unit price estimates.
Good question. A lot of them.
Man, that's a lot of money for mobilization.
These are all how this is done initially, okay? These are all, they come in and they utilize based upon their experience. They oversee multiple projects across this region, okay? And so they've got enough experience that they're able to put in unit prices for all of these different line items. Now, generally, what they do try to do, because these are all estimates, right? Unit prices estimates that they're putting in. They try to make sure they cover costs. But then ultimately, there would be a mobilization when we bid this out, when we get a schedule of values for any project. Like if we go pull any project we've done, the health department project, the green energy park project, they're going to have what they consider a mobilization and setup cost. So I know people think in terms of, oh, it's just putting a piece of equipment on back of a trailer and bringing it over there. All right, but the mobilization for them is setting up the construction site, setting it. Remember, this doesn't happen in 2 days for them. This happens over 6 to 8 months. So it is bringing in equipment, but it's also setting up their storage trailers if they need it, and it's just an estimated cost. It could be, the bids could come in more of these, and ultimately what decides the actual cost of all of this is when we spec it out and bid it out. I mean, these are
Yeah, because
all
I mean, it's
estimates.
only really, it's a half an acre, I think. Isn't that what I read, a clearing,
As far as
clearing wise?
if we go through and do what we're talking about
Yeah,
under
point
that
6 of an
original
acre.
plan. Now, if we
0.6 of
go
an
and
acre.
redesign the trails to the bottom half of that property like we've just been talking about, then ultimately that's going to change. This is based upon, all of this was based upon preliminary information. See, please don't get hung up on this is the actual cost, because the actual cost will
rough
be determined by the
numbers.
bid.
Okay.
This is all projection.
It'll be more than this.
Right, because I mean, that's exactly what I do.
Roughly how low it could be.
And I'm just trying to figure out why they would charge you for rough grading, fine grading, and stuff like that. Grading is grading. Clearing, grading, burning brush, it's all, I don't know.
But that's real cost, and when we get into this project, that may be the kind of cost that we're paying. This company is providing us with a ballpark estimate as to what we might expect to pay.
I see, okay.
This is not the bids. This is nothing other than just a
Guesstimate.
guesstimate to put us in a position to be prepared to know how much money to set aside.
I see, okay.
And then what'll happen is so like all the detailed question you're asking, to determine how much clearing is gonna be and how, first of all, you gotta get a finalized site plan. You know, we've talked about moving trails up and down.
Right.
Then ultimately, there becomes, engineers come in and do, I'm assuming you deal with the erosion control plans and you go
yeah.
through.
Yeah.
Well, we have to pay for to have all that developed and so forth. And then we have to get a general contractor to bid this, who will go to a sub, okay? And the sub, who would be the grader there, will give the general price, which will price us.
Right.
And then generals will mark up, and these are all requirements that we have to do. We're not allowed, we, meaning local government, we're not allowed to just walk out here and just pull together several contractors and tell them to go at it based upon some drawings. We have to go through multiple formal processes, which sometimes tend to drive these costs up. We have to require the contractors to be bonded. We have to have performance bonds, bid
Right.
bonds.
Right.
We make sure they have certain levels of insurance. All these types of things
Right.
is what really makes this a little bit different than
Right.
I'll give you, me having Tony go clear out my property like I did
Right.
a couple of weeks ago. That's
Yeah.
just not the same rule.
Right, I understand that.
So let's try to pull this back to where we need to be. What you're requesting then is at a next business session for us to vote to approve the project.
And
To set aside funding or at least in a letter form to say to a part of that we're willing to fund this.
And what it's really going to do is authorize you, me, and county staff to sign off on the pre-application forms necessary to submit. And it's based upon the numbers that I'm presenting to you today so that we all understand that you'll see the final budget, but it is preliminary committing the $1.1 or so million towards this project.
Does anybody have a problem with putting this application forward at our next business meeting to vote on it to submit?
And the plus side is we have a couple of years before we have to spend a penny.
Well, so you okay with voting on it? Gail?
Yes.
Art? Tom? Okay, so we'll go ahead and put the application on the agenda then.
So the next item, and then I'll go back to that I need to discuss with the board, it really relates back to this information that I provided to the board. It's related to the Dillsboro River Park site. And what I'm going to do is I'm just referring back to this document right now just to remind you the area that I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, what I do have, I don't have in front of me, but I do have the survey for that property. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this survey. What we are going to be looking at eventually, I'm going to show you. Does everybody see my pointer where I'm going in a circle here? This is C.J. Harris. And now I'm going to do an aerial just so everybody can see it better. But this is C.J. Harris. This is the entrance to C.J. Harris. This is the river, going across the river to the county property over here. But can everybody see this little dotted? I know it's a little tight in there, but there's this little dotted line that goes all the way across the river here through the county property. This was an easement given to the Stillwells from Duke Energy prior to this property being transferred to Jackson County. Okay.
Oh,
And so
why? Do they own near there?
they own across the river.
I see. Okay.
See right here. Go back to that, Don, right quick. See their name?
I see it.
Richard and
Okay.
Joan Stillwell.
Okay.
So now what I want to show you is if you'll bear with me, I'm just going to go to our GIS site and just look away so I don't make you dizzy or whatever.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
did you see that, Corey? Oh, anyway, that's real interesting. Now, I'll just say something, since this picture was taken, CJ Harris Parking has gravelled in right to the top of that, where you pull in. They've made a whole another big gravel part in there the last 2 weeks,
So ultimately,
right in there.
tell me right in here.
Yep.
Mhm.
Have you seen that?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's where Duke is coming back and they're doing, yeah, we're doing some things right in there. So let me jump back. Let's see, where was it? So just a reminder, you can kind of see how it goes at the angle. This isn't going to be exact here, but ultimately it's going across the property there. So let me, so
That power line goes across there now.
no, not here. This is an easement that they have gotten to come across right over in here, and it's pretty good ways up the road here, and it does cut this property pretty good as far as being able to utilize it. Now, what their intentions are, just so you know, is if you recall, under our own engineering, we had done some cost estimates of how to get water and sewer down here for these bathrooms. Well, I have since then met on site with TWASA and the Stillwells and also our staff. And ultimately, you know, our engineers gave us an estimate on how to get sewer and water here. This is a force main. This is not gravity coming down through here. So what their plans are is to come across and bore under the river and bore under our property and basically bore and come out and connect. And eventually, with a force main, they'll connect into the force main. It'll require them to size the right pumps on this side, and so that is what their intentions are. Now, this, can you tell the board how long this easement, how long this lasts?
How long they have the
How long
easement
they
for?
have the easement for? Yes.
Yeah, they have the easement. They have 10 years in order to complete construction on the easement. And that is from the date they were recorded at, which is June 9th of 2014. So they have until June of 2024 to complete the construction. So they knew time was getting
And
close.
just to clarify, the easement is for water and sewer utilities. It's not for any other kind of utility.
And so
It's really just sewer.
It's just sewer,
Yeah.
okay.
And so here's what, so Richard Steelwood called me and he offered to the county that he doesn't feel like he has to, his goal was to tap into this force main. So he doesn't feel like that he has to go across this way. So we met on site and they feel like they can get across our property on the back side here, as everybody can see where I'm pointing here. So they feel like they can get in behind our bathrooms, behind us. It's pretty tight in there. But the people who bore and do underground, they feel like they can do this. They feel like they can bore from here and get over to here, and then that they're willing to exchange easements between here and then coming across our property, cutting it in half. And so, Brian, I did mention about, is that environmental issue? Okay, does that create environmental issue when I was out on site? And the best it was explained to me was no. They were actually directly involved with what occurred at the bridge. Okay, and it makes sense at the bridge. If you notice, the river is very low at that point, and the sides are very high. I don't believe there's an opportunity to bore there. You'd have to get so much distance away from the river to be able to bore. The reason that got stopped and the reason my understanding is that sewer line got put on the bridge is because they were attempting to actually impact the riverbed, meaning to dig through and to put the line and dig through the river itself versus boring. My understanding, as long as they stay a certain depth under the river, then it doesn't require any special permit. This is what I'm being told, a special permit.
And I'd asked Don to check because I remember years ago when TWASA attempted to put that sewer line across, they had to hang it from the bridge, and there, I couldn't remember all the reasons why. That's been several decades ago, about what caused them to have to hang it as opposed to going underneath the river. And so that's the answer.
And so I know this is short notice, but ultimately they have an easement and they have the right to come in and use this easement. And their plans is apparently right now they're in contract with a boring company doing some other work for them. And the plans is they're looking to basically get us several borings done in the next couple weeks to a month. And so I felt it's nice of them to reach out to us and basically say they're willing to change easements. The only problem is that creates timing issues for us as far as going out there and surveying and creating a true legal document. So where we're at, though, is if we choose not to take them up on this opportunity, they're going to bore and exercise their right for this easement splitting our property. I believe there is a means if you were to authorize myself and or the chairman to work with them to go ahead and allow them to bore here. And your attorney is working on a general agreement with the understanding that we would follow up with finalized agreements with survey instruments, okay, to allow them to go ahead and bore here with the understanding that they are going to approve off removing this easement across our property at a later date when we can get the surveyors in place. Heather, would you talk about your conversation?
Problem with that, do it? You?
No.
You? You? What?
Well, we got to hear this stuff, boys.
I know it.
And sometimes that generates questions. And so I know we're wanting to try to move on, but this is the first time we've heard this.
I've heard that we've got an easement and they can do anything they want to with it. And they're wanting to give us really help us out and move that easement. Is that what we're doing?
That's what we're hearing for the first time.
I don't think any of us are opposed to that or whatever, are we?
Not that I've heard. I haven't had a chance to poll the board yet, but
Well, they may be all against it. I think it's something else.
okay. I'd like to hear the rest of the conversation now. Mr. Adams?
So what I'd ask Ms. Baker to do is to go ahead and reach out to surveyors, and I'll just let her tell you what she had found and what her discussions have been.
So we had this property surveyed when we had the potential river park. And so I reached out to that surveyor, and he's very familiar with it. The first thing he's going to do, you can see how tight it is in there between property lines. He's going to go out immediately and flag the lines just so when they do this, everybody's clear about where that they'll stay on our property. And then he actually agreed as well that it's going to be better for them to put the new sewer line in is to go ahead and mark it as they want it, and he'll survey after. So I'm going to work on an agreement that says that everybody will sign that says what will happen. Go ahead and have the easement prepared, and then once they finish and actually have completed the work, he'll go out and survey it on the ground as it lies, and then we'll sign and record the final easement. And I think that will work fine as long as we have the agreement signed saying what will happen.
And I know when we went through this original conveyance, there were some very sensitive areas that Duke was trying to protect and to make sure that we continued to protect that were environmentally sensitive areas. This does not endanger any of those by changing the location of this easement.
It actually helps it. It's moving the easement further away from those bat boxes.
Yeah.
And so it actually
There's bat
helps keep
boxes
it
and some river
safer.
cane, and there were some other areas that were very sensitive that Duke
Mostly,
made sure that the easement said that we had to protect.
So just to reiterate what you're saying, this was the environmental that, remember, that I presented to you with all the species and so forth. And so this is where it's identifying the bat boxes and identifying bat trees and identifying wetlands and identifying. So yes, you are, remember, it's all underground, so it's not going to come out to about right here. What I was hearing on this side, just so you know, was that they were going to have to go down in their easement and potentially start the bore somewhere in here to here and then there to there. They were going to have to go in there, and they would have to follow the rules, right, and protect everything. But absolutely going this route, they feel like they can bore from this side of the river. Ultimately, the pipe will just pop up somewhere over here, and it just will not impact anything. So yes, it'll be better for the whole piece of property, yes.
So the action that we need to take on the next meeting, what would,
So I've asked Ms. Baker to put together a potential agreement that would allow for all of this to take place.
And it should be ready in very close draft form for your next meeting, and you can actually disapprove the agreement.
Tom, do you have any issues with what's been presented?
None whatsoever, Chairman.
Yeah?
No.
Boys? Okay. All right, go ahead and prepare the agreement, and we'll take it up at the next meeting.
So, Mr. Chairman, ultimately, going back to the general summary right now of revenues, and I'm going to stay at this area right now. If we want to get into any details, we can go to those other links. But at the end of the day, we have listed these projects. Right now, it sounds to me we are moving forward to prioritize Koala Park based upon the conversations. And really, I'm turning it back over to the board to see if there are more questions, concerns about these other items that have been identified, prioritization, because once you prioritize them, then we can go back and put these projects in these years and start estimating how much revenue's left over after those projects.
Okay. So basically, the projects that we've seen presented are the ones that we, at this point, could prioritize with funding. Personally, I really like the idea of how we mentioned the other day of trying to break down some of the Cashers Glenville Recreation Master Plan and the swimming pool and splash pad. And that's something we've had a lot of conversation about. I'd really like to see us move forward with funding that. I think we recognize that need in the community. Mark, you?
I could agree. I've already kind of got in my mind what priority I would like to see for these projects. When at the right time, we'll maybe prioritize. But if I recall, there was about $500,000 to do the splash and get rid of the pool. And we're not going to do it till after this summer, if we moved forward with it. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if you prioritize it, that could allow us to go ahead and, remember, this doesn't happen. We'd have to start almost immediately to get us in a position to potentially remove the pool after the summer. Yes.
Yes.
I think what for me does it for that project is the fact that that pool is in such a unstable position.
Yes.
We could have a major problem with it tomorrow, exactly. But being able to try to get beyond that and have a contingency plan, and it just makes sense to go ahead.
And I like the idea of replacing it with the splash pad. That gives kids water to play in, and multi-age groups can use that and enjoy it, so,
Provides a little bit more safer recreational opportunity.
yes.
Kids
For
love-
that age of
Kids
youth.
love those things too.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So how do y'all want to do like a running total? How do you sort of, are there other projects that we want to talk about right now?
So right now, for us, it really is talking about what's your next priority, and we can come back and we can do a running total now, or we can come back and literally place it in the years, and when we say we can fund it. For me, now it's Koala Park, it's the splash pad, and we will place it in these years, right, in regards to when we think the project will actually be done. And also remember, we've got to have capacity and time ourselves to be able to handle these projects ourselves. So ultimately, I'm just looking for you to prioritize this at this point, Brian.
Well, yes, I did.
Okay.
And I would really like us to move forward, if possible, with the Dillsboro River Park, and not the commercial one. You know, I looked at all three of those. I feel like the commercial one is counterproductive, as I shared pictures from before. I would like to keep it natural, accessible, and beautiful for our community. And the natural resources that we have there and some of the species that are listed on that, we need to protect those. And I think one reality, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if that sewer line goes across the river to that other side, my assumption is that they're planning to build along the river there. I mean, why would you put in a sewer line if you weren't?
On their property.
Exactly, on their property is what I'm saying. So I think that just, to me, makes this even more important. And Dillsboro is an area that's really growing as far as commerce. If you drive through there on the weekends, it's just packed with cars. The Jarrett House is moving along. It's just going to be a real, I think, attractive area in our community, and not just for tourists, but for our local people. People are fishing there and accessing the rafting and all those things. So that's personal priority. I'm not saying that's the whole board, but that's my personal expression.
Is that passive, is that the passive?
Yes.
One you're talking about?
Yes.
And is that passive equivalent to that lower amount of that 472?
Yes, but there, I liked some of the elements of the middle one, but that's something we can get into later. I mean, it's not.
I was going to ask Don, do you have those numbers?
Yeah, he
I
broke
do.
them down. If you look in the,
Yeah, hang on one second.
I read those on the computer. And Don, I know that, this is kind of maybe not at the right time to bring this up, but I feel like, I know we have these funds designated over these years, but we also have our ARP funds. And I have a strong desire for us to designate some of these ARP funds, like to the park in Whittier, and put a plaque up that says, this park was created with funds from the America Rescue Plan, has lasting impact on our community for generations to come. And I could see that, with the Dillsboro River thing, and just some of this money that we have of the 5 million something left. So it's just a thought.
And I think and Don, his idea I really like is us just throw some ideas out that we as a board would support.
Yes.
And then let him, Ms. Fox, work to try to plug these into some kind of timeline, and also would identify funding sources, and it might require that
Yeah,
we
maybe.
utilize some
Maybe
of the
not, but-
American Recovery Plan's funds that we sort of designated. So going back to this, Gail, that on this option that's presented, are you saying option 3 is the one that you like?
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, yes.
So-
I'm sorry. I thought it was the commercial one. I got
So it's
mixed up.
1.1,
Yes.
roughly 1.2 million.
Yes. 3.
What I'll do is break this out, because the difference between 1 and 3 is 3, the major difference, 1 is getting into the riverbed right here, which causes a couple of years. So we can run 2 tracks. I guess we can run 2 trains of thought on this conversation. The main difference past that riverbed is we're putting bathrooms at C.J. Harris. Running water and sewer is C.J. Harris in option 3 versus option 1. Those are the main difference. When you look at option 1 versus, the reason it's like this is how they couldn't change how they did the reports. So, but option 1 and option 3 are both recreation. The main difference between option 1 and 3 is accessing the river and then putting restrooms, actual running water restrooms at Dillsboro. And so I'm just letting you know those are the significant differences. There is a little bit also road modifications. I do think that we may want to look at some of the entrances of these roads to make sure that if we're going to drive more traffic to them, we want to make sure the entry and exit points are safer. And so that, I'm just letting you know the difference between option 1 and option 3. And probably the 2 tracks that I'm saying we would run is from a permitting standpoint about do we want to, we don't want to wait 2 years, I guess, for a permit, okay, to put a pier in the water. Because I've had this conversation with the environmental engineer, meaning it will take 2 years if we try to modify that riverbed. And we probably don't want to wait 2 years. We might want to do fishing piers and stuff sooner than that. And so that's why I'm saying we may run the modification of the riverbed at a second phase or period.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that sounds like it. And I can support option 3. I think that's a good option.
With it being broken down in phase.
In phases.
Yes.
and we're not talking about a bridge. We're talking about
Correct.
Well, now, I think a bridge may be down the line, but that would be a whole different conversation.
conversation, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We'll let our grandkids build that.
Well, and I think there's some possible grant funding for that.
Possible?
Yeah, possible.
Other projects that jump out today? I think for the money, the Webster
Oh,
part.
yeah, very nice.
Making those, and that's one of our mid-level projects that had some estimates on. I really like the idea about creating those areas where children with handicap disabilities could come and play, and to create that ADA area. That I think that was very attractive for that park.
I agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that idea too, Brian.
what about the Gaelic, what we're calling the Gaelic property? Again, I've gone around. That's the house we purchased behind the parking lot for the library. As you go through and look at it, ultimately, anything you do once you remove the house, and this is for the public's information too, the reason the house hadn't been removed, if you remove the house, we need to have a plan for what we're going to do with the property, because the property would become even more unsafe if I didn't have a plan on how we're going to either put something there or put a parking lot back there.
Do we have any idea on cost?
Well, I can go ahead and I have gotten a proposal from Victor Lofquist to go ahead and provide us a cost for a parking lot, if that's the concept that we'd want to look at. Because what that's going to entail is basically retaining wall and backfilling and making it suitable for that parking to be extended.
Approximately how many spaces would we gain?
I don't
Parking.
know.
There is a need for
I
parking.
know that, yeah, I know there is.
There is. When there's community events, it can get pretty packed.
That might be something you want to research.
Okay,
Bring those numbers back.
okay.
What about the jail generator replacement? What kind of cost is on that?
It's about 150,000.
How much?
About 150,000.
Big.
Say it's not your typical big boy.
From a back, I know that's a backup generator. That's something we may want to make sure we get price on too.
And is the current generator, is it in disrepair, or is it potential, or is it disrepair, or costs are so inefficient to get it up and running?
It's operating, but it's old.
Okay,
But
okay.
I guess there's a life expectancy.
Yeah, you only get so many hours out of them.
And so what we'll do, some of these will be fund balance appropriation, like that would be a fund. We would not put that in the 5-year CIP plan. So I would do, if there's any of these major projects that we'd talk about, then I would suggest that they would basically just be a fund balance conversation, not planned out for the next 5-year conversation.
And some of these projects, like the storage, I know we have a huge need for storage. Several of our departments, emergency management, sheriff,
Yes, they've all said
public
that.
works, a lot of them have, yeah, but that's not something we can just put our finger on today and say, yeah, this is how much it'll cost, because we've got to identify where we're going to put it, what kind of facility, whether that means buying a facility, leasing a facility, building a facility. There could be a lot of different ways that we accomplish that. Is it one location? Is it multiple locations?
Mhm.
So that's going to require quite a bit of research.
But that one would be in it would be a large enough expense that would be in the long-term plan process. Yeah. Now for what buildings are costing today.
About the restroom on the river down there, Webster.
So on that one, I believe that at the meeting, we talked about that at our current little put-in right there at the bridge, it cannot be built there because it's the floodway. We cannot put a structure there. So if we were trying to get a bathroom in that particular area, we would need to look for property to purchase.
So the one down at Harris, as we refer to it, it's not in the floodway?
No.
It's
think-
interesting how
Well,
much
I don't
higher
think
up
it
that
is.
is.
I would assume it's not, but I haven't double checked. I do know, I did go check with our planning and code and so forth about whether or not we could put something there, and it's unfortunately in the floodway.
Well, that gray house that looks old but is not that old, it's in the floodway. That big gray house right there, because I know the people, they could not get flood insurance.
Okay. So let's
on
talk
that
about the
big house.
difference.
So that's, yeah.
So that is the floodway, and that is the floodplain, all right? So this is CJ Harry, answering your question about, so now let's go down the river a little bit.
What is the light aqua color?
That's like the 500-year flood. I'm not really sure what the rules are on that one. They're laxer, but that is the floodplain, and that's the floodway. And so let me just go down the river a little bit.
That blue is where the restroom is?
You can build, but you have to
I see.
raise it.
Okay.
That's where the houses are on stilts.
There it is. Huh? Where am I?
There.
Oh, yeah. Floodway.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's come up to that road there. It's been in that road.
I don't know if I could, I don't know if you want to squeeze something right on the
Property on
road.
this side of the road. On the, not the creek or the river side, but the other side.
We don't have to be right there. All they want to do is somewhere to put in and somewhere a lady could go up there and use the restroom. So
And I think it'd be an area with
she
a
can
parking
wait till we
spot.
get a little further down or go sooner. We can look at it later.
Okay, we got to 2 o'clock, and we do want to recess this and come back and finish this meeting out after our other meeting. I think we got close to finishing. So
You need a motion.
I don't think we have to have a motion to recess. How long do you think we're going to be in the other one?
Well, it's both closed sessions in regards to economic development and, what's the other one? The privileged information, and I don't know, it could be 30 minutes to an hour.
Say an hour, 3 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll recess this meeting for an hour. We'll come back at 3. Expansion, is that correct?
It's, yes, sir, it's business expansion and privileged information.
All right, so we have a need for closed session under a couple of items under business expansion and privileged information. Do I have a motion that we go into closed session concerning those 2 items?
So move.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
No action was taken in closed session other than discussion of items. And at this time, with no further business, we're going to recess this meeting once again, and we'll reconvene it tomorrow morning, March the 9th at 9 a.m. So we'll recess until March 9th at 9 a.m. All right, now at this time, I'm going to call back to order the work session that we recessed earlier today at 2 p.m. and recognize our county manager, Mr. Adams, to pick back up where we left off.
Yes, sir. Really, we left off at this point that we were discussing priorities. I believe we were wrapping up. Let me make sure I have the right agenda.
I think we went over several items that board members had suggested some potential additional research and getting some numbers and allow staff to sort of create a timeline and funding sources. And is there any other projects then that we need to talk about today? Any other projects that the board would like to talk about? Or is this enough to get them to start working? Okay. Is there other business? Item 2.
I have no other business.
Any other business? Boyce, do you have anything today to bring up?
Has to be asked to all this.
No, it can be about anything.
What is going on? We're building 2 hothouses up there in Skyland.
Greenhouses?
Greenhouses.
Greenhouses.
Yes.
Not only we build them, they're about built. And, what else is going in there?
Right
Are
now,
there
there's,
plans?
I'm sorry?
Are there other plans?
No, sir. You know, we're just, anything, there's going to be, I believe, well, you say there's going to be a tent that, that Corporate Extension is looking to put up there. Anything that we're putting there is going to be temporary in nature, so no permanent foundations. We're trying to get use of the property while we're still planning that property for potential other uses. So we've consistently gotten requests from maintenance and from Corporate Extension to utilize that property. And so what I've tried to do is just, for example, the greenhouses that are being put up, we can easily move them to another location. Same thing with that tent, the walking trail. You know, those bees are back there. So it'll be anything temporary in nature that I know Extension and Public Works are looking at.
Are they still working cattle there?
No,
No, okay.
no, but I think they plan on maybe putting up a corral, doing a thing or 2 later.
But that's something that Randy,
Well, I heard maybe they're gonna put some storage buildings or something in there.
nothing, it's gonna be, a tent's gonna go there, but no metal buildings or anything like that.
I think the greenhouses are fine. Our whole community up Skyland Drive has become really a eyesore. If y'all never go up through there, it's become worse and it's become worse. I sure don't want us to contribute to it. And you go up there, I don't guess it matters to mention names and what, you go up there where Kirby Enges deal is, that's an eyesore. It's a terrible eyesore. And they even brought a trailer up there and dismantled it right there on the side of the road, and there it is. And we've been looking at it, and the town has to see if we get that out of there. Well, you know the problem that's gonna be. When you go up there to Green Brothers now, and they've put all their toilets on the side of the road and stored them. I'm talking about within 6 or 8 foot of the road. And then next thing you got metal storage buildings that runs almost for a mile all the way through there till you get up to what we used to call the airport straight. And the whole plot, that a lot of people live in that community, and the whole thing's become just it's terrible. And what people live up there, they keep their lawns mowed, and they keep everything clean and pretty, and we just keep having all this come in. So I sure don't want us to contribute to it. I didn't think we were, but.
And we occasionally do store vehicles over there too.
Yeah, I
If
know.
you've seen that, yeah. And then remind me, boys, what I did was have maintenance create a overall plan. I was somewhat on the same vein. I wanted to, instead of just sporadically throwing things out there, I had them create the plan for the walking trail, and then we also created around where we put those stalls, and then I tried to make them take in consideration the walking trails when they were putting those greenhouses, and so that it does look like there's some thought in the organization when they start trying to use that space temporarily.
Okay. Commissioner Woody, do you have anything?
Yes, a friend forwarded me this grant opportunity from loweshometowns.com. And it's a opportunity to get a grant that would enhance something in your community. And I was thinking about the all access playground in Webster. And that we might, in a governmental agency can apply for this. And I was wondering if it would be all right if I forwarded it to, but I'm not sure who would write the grant. But it's not a real hard process. And it looked from my just reading it quickly that the project that being able to get those playground equipment, all access in that community would really fit this kind of need.
I would, if you send it to me,
I'll send it to you.
I'll
Okay.
forward it to Recreation and
Okay.
Rusty and have
Yeah.
his staff take a look at it.
Yeah,
Might be that there's other areas that could be applicable to.
and it could be
other
because,
than
yeah,
Webster right now.
it could be. And maybe even the access to the old log cabin, ARP, all access to, anyway. Okay, I'll forward it to you.
Commissioner Jones?
The kitchen at the Skyline Services Center, if I remember seeing $75,000 for that equipment somewhere, and I know that was in the past a questionable expense because of is there a need for a commercial kitchen for some of our local farmers and individual business persons, as there were a few back in the day. And we had a county manager who was wise enough to plumb and wire that space, but I guess the commissioners never moved forward on utilizing it, putting the kitchen equipment in. So far, correct?
Correct.
Maybe about the wise manager part?
Yeah, I don't know about all that, but yeah.
But if
Lay the butter on.
if there is ARPA money left, I think it'd be worth consideration if there is that need out in our community and the farmers market, et cetera.
So what I'll do is I'll reach back out to Rob Hawk. Two things when we were dealing with that issue when it came. One was in order to proceed forward, to put the plumbing in there, but we also at that point had Mr. Hawk from Corporate Extension come and talk to the board about you need to have someone manage it also and run. So I'll reach out to him to see if there's a need and if there's still an interest of Corporate Extension taking the lead, and if there is, then we can continue those conversations.
Thank you.
And that was, there's a lot, at one time, there's a lot of people seemed like they was interested in that, and when we was putting that complex together up there, that's something we looked at real strong. But all these people that were so boisterous about it at the time, I don't know about you, Brian, I've not heard from one of them since. And one of the fellows that pushed it so much was a fellow from Franklin that worked at Sun Group. What's his name? A big tall fellow.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember,
You know
but
what I'm talking
I
about?
know who you're talking about, but I can't remember his name off the top.
And I've not seen or heard from him since. So there may be a great need, and there may be a lot of people want to do that, but it's sure not like it was, is it?
Well,
Well, and I think if I remember, and I wasn't on the board then, but if I remember conversations, there were people from the farmers market who wanted to be able to sell their jelly or things that they made and cooked and had to use a certified kitchen to make that legal.
Commissioner Scribbling? Okay.
You have
Okay, we can talk about that. Yeah, we'll do that later. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I do not have anything. Mr.
okay,
Chairman.
and I don't have anything either. Mr. Adams, anything else from staff?
No, sir.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Yeah, okay.